Good evening and welcome to Tuesday Thoughts. Thank you to Lindsay. I'm not too sure what part of the world you're from, Lindsay, but thank you very much indeed. And it's a quick hello to anyone who's will be, well, I think not too sure who's on at the moment, according to my little icon, but I think somebody should be along shortly. My sound engineer is back from Greece, so hopefully she'll be just letting me know she can hear me loud and clear. It might be good to put my banner on actually, just to make sure that people can see it, maybe not get too distracted. Okay, so another Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, and welcome to anyone. And if you're watching on catch up, obviously you're not committed to the 7 o'clock start, so you watch it as and when you require. So, oh, hang on. There we go. Yeah, and waving. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I've not got my thing sorted out, but yes, thank you. So great. Hand pink waving. That's what it says on YouTube. So thank you very much indeed, Saf. Yeah, job done. Fantastic job again as always. If you just check on Facebook, that actually should be okay, to be honest. So we're here looking at this evening. Yeah, good evening, Sonia, and anyone else who's watching. Welcome to Tuesday Thoughts. A name that was given from Lindsay, somewhere on the planet, somewhere on Earth, I think. I was going to end the whole thing around betrayal, but had conversations with individuals, heard some stories, and I thought, you know what, I still can't finish this because it's very live and current. And yesterday I was somewhere, let's say her, and somebody I've known for a little while now actually told me she'd been watching them, and they've been meaningful and resonated with us. So thank you very much indeed. Shan't say your name, so your confidence, so your anonymity is it will be maintained, but I know who you are, so that's the main thing. Good evening, Jerry. Anyone else who's watching, silent partners, people in other parts of the world, thank you very much for taking the time out. So we'll be looking at is recovery from betrayal possible, after some of the questions from last week and conversations during the week with individuals, but also want to make an announcement. I'll say, oh God, right, thank you, Carol, really, yeah, just thank you very much indeed. So for those of you watching Tuesday Thoughts, we're looking at is recovery from betrayal possible? We've been spending some time over the last couple of months now what betrayal is, where your trust has been violated. We've looked at work, we looked at relationships, we looked at spiritual institutions, but tonight we're going to go back to relationships. I want to focus on that. So the announcement is on Saturday the 11th of November, I'll be doing a workshop on betrayal, its impact on childhood, on relationships and recovery. That's going to be the Saturday the 11th of November in person workshop seminar in Walsall. So I've got somebody working on a flyer. As soon as it's done, I like it, I'll be sending it out there, and then you'll I'll be limited to about 20 people because I want a kind of small group, and I'll be having another counsellor to work with me just in case whilst we're doing the work that somebody wants some time out, so there's somebody else on hand while I'm involved in delivery. So that's Saturday the 11th of November in Walsall, and I'll let you know more about that as the weeks come and go. So so this whole thing about recovery, is it possible? I think there's a few things we need to kind of just ground really. This whole thing about, for me, it was about recovery, healing and resilience. I think some folks from a religious community, there's a whole thing around healing, and there's certain perspectives on that, and I'll be talking about that a bit. From the counseling world, there's recovery. And then from the world in general, there's something about resilience. So, the word healing, the process of becoming well again. So one of the things about healing, of course, is that if you've had a major illness, and for some religious groups, they believe in kind of divine healing. And this is simply this: if you've been unwell and you receive healing, you can't ever undo the past, in the sense that you've been unwell and now you're in a kind of different state. So healing is the process of becoming well again. Some people feel that it can only be done supernaturally. I am of the opinion that there is that, maybe, but also there's help we get from doctors and nurses, psychotherapists, counselors, and so forth, that helps us to get better again. And for me, that's a part of healing as well. So that's healing. So recovery is the process of change through which individuals improve their health, wellness, live self-directed lives, and strive to reach their full potential. That's recovery. So that's our agency. That's something that we need to do to get ourselves back on, back to square one, back on level ground. So that's something that we need to do. We're involved in that process. The NHS have a definition as well for recovery. Listen to this: a deeply personal, unique process of changing one's attitudes, goals, feelings, skills, and or roles. It is a way of living a satisfying, hopeful, and contributing life, even with the limitations caused by illness. So the NHS view is simply this, that you can recover even if you've got the illness. You can still do things. You can set new sights, new goals. And to be honest, when you get to a certain age, all of us are carrying some form of illness. But the illness doesn't stop us from doing what we need to do. Good evening, Norma and Paul. Let anyone else who's watching who remain silent. So for example, I've got an arthritic hip. Can't run anymore, but I can swim and cycle. So my life hasn't stopped. I can still do lots of things, but I've got a limitation now. That's the hip. And for some of us listening, either kind of commenting or not, we're carrying something. It's kind of well known in the world of athletics or sports that athletes are always carrying an injury. You're never not carrying an injury, but you have to manage the best way you can. Hence, sports people have great physiotherapists and all that type of thing to help people continue to do what they need to do, even with the limitation. And resilience basically is the power. Now, it's taken from the world of kind of metallurgy or metalwork, so or materials. It's materials that are bent, misshaped, prodded, poked under pressure. But the resilience is the ability of the material to return to its former state or its former shape. And they've used that to talk about resilience, that when we go through difficult times, it's the ability to bounce back better. So that's the whole idea of resilience. Can you recover from betrayal? Yes, you can, but the process is painful. And now this is what happens. Our mind tells us that the process is painful and the emotions, but what we can do, because it's painful, we don't begin the process and we remain stuck. I see it in lots with relationships, women and men who've been in difficult relationships, and they can't get past what's happened to them, and they remain stuck, and their lives, even though they may develop in certain areas, but there's certain parts of their lives that basically the lid is down and they've locked the padlocks and they've thrown the keys away. And there's certain aspects of their lives that they can't function. They're very resistant of going to another relationship because the next relationship, there's a fear it's going to happen again. So they can do some form of progression, but there's lots of limitations. So, and then what happened? People get stuck. And then at some point that stuckness comes out in various ways. So is recovery possible? Yes, it is. You don't need loads of people, maybe just 2 or 3 people who kind of help you through the situation. First thing, one of the things that's really important, seek counseling. Seek external subjective support that can really help you work through the pain. Quite often when we have things happen to us, what is difficult is processing the emotions. That's the difficulty. If we can process that, we're usually able to get on with our lives and flourish and progress really, really well. But if we can't do that, we remain stuck. I recall years ago, I may have showed this a long time ago. I recall somebody who was referred to me from the NHS. This was many years ago, decades ago now, and her husband had passed. And as she sat down and looked at me, right in the eye, she said, "This ain't going to work, you know." So that's a kind of good starting point, isn't it? So we did the work, and I asked her kind of middle of the session, "Were you angry any at all?" She said, "No." And then about 10-15 minutes later in the session, something else happened, and she said, "I am angry." And this is what she was angry about. She'd looked after her hubby. He was I think it was a former policeman, had cancer, 47, a really young guy. And he was dying. And she said, "Delroy, I went to the toilet for a few minutes. And while I'd gone, that's when he died." And she said, "I was livid. I wanted to be with him when he passed, when he took his final breath." And she carried that anger for 7 years. And every day that he died, every year that he died, each day she would take the time off. It's coincided that one of the days that was the time for our session. And she said to me, I might not come. I said, look, let's put it in the diary. If you come, you do. And if you don't, you don't. Brilliant. Anyway, she came and we did this whole thing around an unsent letter. And it took her a while to do it. And she told me, she said, Delroy, I finally did it. I cried all the way through it. And then she said, I don't know what to do with the letter now. So I said, no, I don't know where this idea came from. The husband's ashes were in the front room in a container. I said, well, have you thought about burning the letter and then putting the ashes in the container? She said, what a great idea. She did that. And on the final session, she came in really elated and jubilant. She said, Delroy, I've met somebody. And so for 7 years, she was stuck, couldn't get past the pain and the difficulty. And once she was able to process it, then the whole world opened up and she was able to form a new relationship. So sometimes we need somebody to help us work through those painful emotions. And the longer we leave it, the more difficult it is. And then what happens if you do get into a relationship, the next person suffers from the pain from the previous relationship. And then relationships can go sour, go south, and all the rest of it. So really seeing somebody who can help you work through those emotions can be really, really important. So we learn how to process emotions. We learn what's happened from a new perspective, and we see our lives from a new perspective. And if we go through the process well, there's no reason why we can't come back stronger, more resolute, more determined. We kind of know, we can spot the troublemaker a mile off. One of the things I've said to women in particular who have repeatedly have abusive relationships, once they work through what's going on and taken place, quite often when they re-enter the relationship market again, so to speak, they spot the little devils a mile off, so they learn not to get involved in them even before it gets too emotional. So this whole thing about processing emotions is really, really important. Number two, in terms of moving forward, can we recover from betrayal? Yes. Number two, the affair has to stop, period. I've been hearing some stories the last week or two, horrendous stories. I'll not share anything on here because it's kind of recent and so forth and so forth. But yeah, the affair has to be over. The betrayer has to put an end to the relationship. If the person who has betrayed you cannot put an end to the relationship, doesn't want to put an end to the relationship, you've only got one option. You've only got one option. Regardless of your religious convictions and so forth, you've only got one option. He or she doesn't want to end the relationship. You've got one option. You cannot continue in that relationship at all. So you have a decision to make. So the ending of the affair, or an affair, is only one option, but there's other forms of betrayal, emotional confidence, keeping secrets, sexting, that you're not doing the sexting stuff with your partner or your wife or your spouse, you're doing it with somebody else. That is also a form of betrayal. And also the actual thing, of course, the actual physical intimacy between two people. Doesn't have to be somebody of the opposite sex. Somebody can be married and they have an affair with somebody of the same sex. I've certainly known it in my time as a therapist, and that causes all manner of problems and difficulties for children, for the partners. It really is a kind of car crash. It really is a mess. So what you can do if you're going to end it, the long drawn out ending doesn't work. You have to end it final and sudden. And if you say to the person, look, you send them a text under the supervision of your partner, that the partner knows what you're doing. They possibly read it so they know the wording is correct and you're not kind of still leaving the person on. I'm sending you this final text. Our relationship is over. After this text, I'm blocking you. And that's the end of it. So the person who has done the betrayal has to begin sending out clear signals that the affair has ended and I'm not going to go back there again. But obviously we know we live in the real world. And as I say this, I know we live in the real world. They can say that to you in front of you, but behind the scenes, they're still going back and seeing the other person. Okay. So the one, number three, the one who has had the full affair, he or she has to take full responsibility of their behavior. So the Professor John Gottman says this: Until their remorse equals the pain they have caused the betrayed, until their remorse equals the pain that they have caused the betrayed cannot get over it. So the remorse has to be equal to the pain. In a sense, there's a sense of brokenness, and the person who's had the affair has to go through that painful process, not like for like, but there has to be seen that this process is painful, the remorse is painful, and this person is serious and taking full responsibility. You're not blaming your spouse for not doing this and not doing that, not doing the other. You're taking full responsibility for your actions, as for the reason for the affair and also for ending it. Now, what I'm going to say next is kind of difficult. Good evening, Jenny. Good to see you. And anyone else who's come on a bit later than 7 o'clock. We're looking at, is recovery from betrayal possible? Now, listen, I'll be getting through this in about 30 minutes, maybe. If you've got questions and so forth, please add your thoughts and either statements or comments, ask a question. That's fine. But over the years, I've worked with individuals who've had things happen, and this can take a good year working through. And it depends, of course, what state in which they come in. Sometimes some people, all they want is to be able to work through the emotions, and once they're able to do that, they kind of get a sense of where they need to go, what they need to do, and so forth. But the emotions really cloud things up and make things really difficult. So I get through this in half an hour, but this is a real journey. But what I can say, if people stay with it, work through the pain, what they experience, the other side of the pain is freedom. Quite often they can see what they're doing in the relationship, what they didn't do, what they maybe should have done, but they can emerge through this a stronger, better human being, possibly in many cases a better person to be with than before the breakup. So what I'm going to say next, so number one, we've looked at counselling. Number two, that the affair has to be ended by the person who started the affair. And number three, the person who started the affair has to take full responsibility. Now, number four, I'm going to treat this one very, very seriously with lots of caveats and cautions. If you have been betrayed, one of the things you need to be able to do is to develop a forgiving heart. But let me explain, especially for the religious types. I hear it too often whereby it's usually a woman who's been betrayed by a husband. She'll go and see her minister, and the minister will say, well, you need to pray about it. You need to forgive him. Dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. Forgiveness is a process. And I think there's some reasons why folks say that. Quite often it's about creating a good image of the organization, a good image of the institution, and God forbid that people should get to know that this has happened. Let's sweep it under the carpet. It's about this thing about looking good, which is not helpful. So this whole thing about forgiveness can be used to quiet people, to silence people. I heard a really sad story during the week whereby a woman has been physically abused by her husband, and the husband, she goes to the minister, and he says to her, pray about it, pray it through. And she said, yes, I'm praying about it with my broken jaw. So there's this whole thing about not dealing with things properly. This whole thing around forgiveness can be a form of manipulation to keep people quiet, and it is not good. I want to say a bit more about that in a minute. Forgiveness is a process. And as I said, people insist on forgiveness for a whole range of reasons. And let me just say this, when I've spoken to individuals about, so most of my counseling has been outside of the religious world, but I have spoken about forgiveness, and I ask people, what is your understanding of forgiveness? And quite often people's understanding of forgiveness is letting the person off the hook. No, it's not. If the person has treated you badly, they've treated you badly. You're not letting them off the hook. What forgiveness is allowing yourself to be released and freed from the anger, the rage, the bitterness, the resentment, allowing yourself to be free from the toxins from your body that can hold you a prisoner. So it's not about letting the other person, it's not benefiting the other person. Forgiveness is benefiting you. So you're free to be able to move on with your life and do what you need to do. Also, I'll say this, that even if you have got to the place where you've forgiven somebody, because of betrayal, it doesn't mean to say that you will remain married to them. It could be that the relationship has been so toxic and this person is not going to change. It may not do the affair, but it's not going to change. You need to make a decision about your life. Now, for some people, what I've said is really controversial. Deborah, how can you say that? I recall a situation in a church quite a few years ago where the husband was really, really abusive and violently abusive. And the woman went round to the home with somebody else to get some of her belongings. Argument started, ensued, and the ex ended up killing this particular woman. So these things happen. I think one of the things that I really do know now, regardless of what religion you are, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Sikhism, people are human beings and we have human traits, and we can be very, very human when things are really, really bad. So for me, having faith, for some people it tempers it, but for lots of us, we're human, and when things get really bad, we can do some abominable things. So this whole thing around forgiveness is really, for me, it's really important. We can't take it, we can't use it to silence people. Oh, you know, this man has been really abusive. I remember, again, I was in, I shan't say the country, quite a few years ago, and this young woman, she couldn't have been more, she was no more than 35, became pregnant, and in the culture, she had to marry this individual. And this guy, her husband, in 5 years had 8 affairs, and she was expected to stay with him. She got 3 kids, and I remember saying to a lovely young woman, she said to me, you know, Delroy, she said, he's had 8 affairs in 5 years, and I'm expected to stay with him. And that's betrayal, terrible. So this whole thing about forgiveness, and this whole thing about forgiveness is, if you don't understand it, I'll say this clearly. Forgiveness is being able to release yourself of the pain, the anger, the rage, the bitterness, the emotions, the resentment, in the face of the inner voice screaming that you want revenge. So there's this tussle that's going on. Hence, that's why I said right at the beginning, sometimes it's seeing a counselor that you can say to the counselor, what, you know what, I want to kill him, I want to kill her. Now, you're not going to do it, but that's how you feel. And the counselor provides the space for you to express those emotions in a safe space where you can express those emotions. They will subside, they will diffuse, and then you can go on and do what you need to do. Okay, so the final thing, well, there's loads of other things, but one of the things, certainly before I get into the final thing, if you're a keep fit person, you may not feel like it, but keep up your keep fit, keep up the exercise, keep up the diet. If you can't, sometimes it's very difficult to sleep when you're under a lot of stress, but try to keep as much as you can of your life normal in terms of routine structure. What happens quite often when we've been disrupted, everything falls out of sync. Everything falls out of coordination and familiarity. And what we need, as difficult as it is to put order and structure and routine in place so we can continue our lives as best as possible. And what I would say, for individuals that may be listening, and I don't know who's listening to, may have just gone through a separation divorce, one of the things that can be incredibly helpful, even though it's not here, certainly go and see a counselor, but you know what? Journaling is really, really important. The whole thing about writing as a cathartic exercise, to use writing to express how you feel, can really speed up the process. You pour out the anger and rage in words on a page. There's some people who write poetry, they write poetry, angry poetry, that reflects what they're going through. But this whole thing of writing can really help you go through the process, face the pain head on, and work through it. It doesn't go on forever. There comes a point where it lessens, and you become stronger, and you become stronger, and it lessens and lessens. There may be moments, of course, there may be a memory that reminds you of something, but actually you've got through the worst and you're able to move forward. The final thing is, so if you decide to stay together, fortify your marriage and yourself. So you do that. So how do you do that? You develop strong boundaries. And one of the things you do, you understand what went wrong, and then you do things to make amends. So I hope that nobody's kind of too squeamish. Hopefully there's no children watching. I recall watching it was a counselling video. It was a couple. The guy had an affair and gone to see a counsellor. So these were two kind of religious people, and wife thought that the marriage was great, and when I don't know how many sessions it was, but it kind of came to the head as why this guy had the affair. And he said he had the affair because he wanted to try different sexual positions. And his wife said, "Why didn't you ask me? I want to do it too." So lack of communication. He assumed that she wouldn't want to do anything like that. Gosh, maybe my viewings now might have gone down significantly after sharing that naughty story. But you know, it's life, and certainly over the years I've been a counsellor, I can't say I've heard everything, I haven't, but I've heard loads of stories. And as you can imagine, 35 years being a counsellor, you hear loads of stories. So and that's what actually took place. He had the affair because he thought that his wife wouldn't be sexually adventurous. And she said, well, that's what I wanted to do, but they didn't communicate. So one of the things that can happen in terms of fortifying the marriage itself is actually developing better lines of communication, talking about stuff that may be quite difficult to talk about, but actually it helps the relationship to move forward. And in so doing, when we're able to talk better, quite often intimacy increases as well, closeness increases as well. So one of the things, let me just go back to number 4, because I missed something that was really important. Forgiveness is about you, who's been betrayed, but the person who caused the betrayal has to earn your trust. So forgiveness and trust. So you who've been betrayed must learn there's a distinction between forgiveness and trust. Forgiveness is about you, that you free yourself, but the person who had the affair, who betrayed you, has to earn your trust. Now, of course, and I don't mean in some ways that sometimes when people say, look, you got to earn my trust, they can be really bloody minded about it and really be difficult when there's no need to be. And I'm not talking about that. You can see the person is trying their hardest, they're remorseful, you can see the pain, the damage they've caused you and the family and so forth. You can see it, and they're trying their hardest to come back. And sometimes individuals can be really making them suffer when there is no need for them to suffer. So there is understanding the distinction between understand the distinction between forgiveness and trust. Really important. So yep, that's it. So can you recover? Yes, it takes time. Can you forget? No. But what you can do, if you decide then, look, I can't stay with this, you use that opportunity to process the emotion, but also you use the opportunity with a counselor, maybe to look at some stumbling blocks that's been in your life. Person had the affair, it's caused problems, you can't move on, they can't move on, but then it's an opportunity to explore maybe some of the barriers and hurdles you've had in your life. You've hidden them. Now is the opportunity to explore them, so that if you're able to work through them, you're maybe then in a better position after the therapy to begin a new life and a new relationship with somebody. So that is it. Yeah, just to say, if you've just arrived on Saturday 11th of November, I'll get a flyer out in the next week or so. I'll be doing a one-day workshop, 10 till 3, on betrayal, its effect in childhood, how it affects relationships, and then how we can recover. So that is a workshop, Saturday the 11th of November in Walsall. Limited to about 20 people because I want it to be a small group, so it can be kind of close. Sometimes if it gets too big, it can lose some of its effectiveness. But watch out on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and also YouTube when I'll be announcing it. And if you want more information, just email me on my email address, and I'll give you the outline of what we'll be looking at. Okay, that's it. Take care. I don't think there's anybody else with any questions or comments. I know Jenny normally has, but not this evening. So hopefully, I think that is it. I'll just wait a minute or two. Maybe somebody's just typing something up. I just want to give it a minute. Good evening, Jeff. Good to see you this evening. And I think that is it. Yeah. So you can recover. Takes time. Yeah, it depends on an individual. Sometimes for individuals who are kind of well switched on and so forth, it doesn't have to take too long. People that are self-aware already, and if people are no questions, all right, cheers. But also for individuals who really want to embrace it, you know, they've had enough of it. They really want to embrace it, deal with the pain, work through it. It doesn't have to take all that long. But for some of us who are really kind of sensitive, and it's really damaged us, and it's really knocked us for six, knocked our confidence and so forth, it can take a while. So that's it. Enjoy the rest of your evening and your week. And next Tuesday, I'll be back with something else. All right, take care. Enjoy the rest of your time. See ya. Bye. Enjoy the sun while it's here. It's been here today, last 2 days. Enjoy it while you can. Take care, everybody. All the best. Bye-bye.